Having hay as a primary crop makes a long-term organic crop rotation possible for J&L Hay Farms. Dan Miller manages J&L Hay Farms in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. The farm has 2,000 acres of certified organic corn, soy, food-grade wheat, and perennial hay. The farm was certified organic in 2015, and most of the hay is sold to organic dairies as well as other local animal farms who are seeking high-quality forage. Dan strives for a 7 to 8 year rotation that includes alfalfa or clover grass mix for 4 to 5 years, of which he takes 4 to 5 cuttings per year.
We do a lot of alfalfa grass mixes. I experiment with every different kind of grasses you can think of, but pretty much have settled with alfalfa mixed with orchard timothy, fescue, festoium. Then I have some fields where we do clover. We'll do a kind of a shorter season, maybe just 2 years. In a perennial, we'll do clover. This field in the background here is, I believe that's red clover mixed with Italian ryegrass and orchard grass. So we're always experimenting with different mixtures, but that's kind of my main ones. I like alfalfa grasses and then clover with ryegrass and orchard.
To end the rotation, Dan terminates the hay with 2 passes of a high-speed disc. He describes the importance of time of year in effectively killing the perennial crop before planting a row crop.
I've found it's a lot easier to kill a perennial crop, grass hay especially. It's a lot easier to kill in the fall than it is in the spring. In the spring, it's just trying to grow, and it's full of life, and it's very hard to kill. So we're trying to time we're trying to kill it in the fall, if possible, after it grew all summer, and it's a lot easier to work it down, get it killed.
Tillage is unnecessary during the hay phase because most weeds get mowed off as the hay is harvested. Keeping a field in living cover while minimizing soil disturbance seems to reduce weed pressure and produce a healthy soil base prior to planting row crops. Although some tillage is still needed in row crops, Dan applies several strategies to reduce the negative impacts of tillage on soil health.
Probably corn and soybeans would require the most tillage, especially cultivation. I have done some experimenting with no-tilling corn or soybeans. The best luck I've had is no-tilling soybeans into a winter wheat stand, and then we'll come in and combine the wheat, take the heads off. I've had pretty good success that way, but for the most part, we're still cultivating. We're planting our row crops, and then we'll cultivate twice. So that would be 2 passes through the summer of cultivation. I never do a row crop, corn or soybeans, more than 1 year. We'll do a year of that. Then we'll often do either corn or soy, and then we'll do winter wheat or oats, some kind of a small grain. Breaks up the weed cycle a lot if we can do. The timing is different times of tillage, and so then we'll often do a third year. In the third year, we'll do another row crop, corn or soy again, and then either back to a perennial. Sometimes often we'll do wheat again, winter wheat, and then that gives me time to establish perennials in the fall after July when the wheat comes off.
Overall, Dan considers rotating crops and practices as part of the art of organic farming, finding it difficult to have a standard rotation year after year. Actually, he thinks it's more important to be flexible and adapt to different conditions when deciding what to plant.
So I started organic farming thinking that we would have a typical rotation where everything's laid out. You can plan ahead. Of course, the organic plan, they want to know, what your rotation is. But I've switched that to where I sit down with my agronomist every winter, and basically we decide according to the fertility and the weed pressure, and we basically try to make it work. I sometimes think this organic farming is more of an art than anything else, because you can't really just copy what anyone else is doing and what everyone else does and do a certain thing. You know, you have to, every field, depending on the weather, depending on your soil fertility, and there's lots of unique things.
On any farm, when hay is harvested, crop nutrients leave the field with it. Key nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium must be replenished. Legume-based hay provides an opportunity to supply some nitrogen. Depending on soil tests, manure and other soil amendments are also used to ensure adequate amounts of nutrients are applied.
So nitrogen on hay ground, that's one reason why I like to have some legumes in with our hay. That seems to, and also once you get your organic matter high enough, I don't have much trouble with that. Even on grass hay, we will use a little bit of manure based on the soil test. I've partnered with some other farmers. We have some cow manure, some chicken litter, but again, based on the soil test. Everything's based on the soil test, what we need. But it seems like once you get the ecosystem, you get the biology working, the nitrogen more or less takes care of itself on a perennial crop.
Dan's main approach to maintaining soil fertility is to focus on managing crop quality directly, which includes in-season monitoring. He attributes a healthy crop to good soil health and fertility, and achieves it by tailoring a plan specifically to his farm's needs.
Test all of our forages. Every load gets tested, and that's very helpful as we do a soil test in a field, and then we watch the forage analysis. Those two together, you can learn a lot just by watching that. And as we do different things to the fields and we watch what happens to the forage tests, and then I spend hours talking to my customers and how it feeds for them, and that's how we learn. Basically, that's how we base our fertility. And I think that tells us a lot about soil health as well, how the animals perform and how the forage tests. We use a lot of biological products to try to get our energy levels higher, sugars and energy levels. So I often we'll use our refractometer, do some Brix readings. It seems like that always translates, if we can get higher Brix levels, translates into higher energy, better for the grass-fed guys.
In addition to high-quality forage, Dan has been able to consistently produce high-quality food-grade wheat. Some challenges are posed when the grasses he includes in his hay crops compete with the grains. However, he's been able to overcome this in his crop rotation.
Yes, I would say we do, especially if you take out a perennial hay crop and go and plant a small grain right after that. It would be a challenge. So often we'll take out of a hay crop, we'll first do corn or soybeans the first year, or I'll try to, actually often we'll do a small grain just as a cover crop. So in the fall, we'll try to work our hay ground and plant a cover crop, which will help to smother the hay. And then the next year, we'll work it again in the spring and plant our row crop.
Perennial crops are extremely important in organic cropping systems. Dan's experience producing hay, as well as a reliable local market, has helped his success of farming organically.
I would say without perennial crops, it would be very hard to have a good organic system. And so we were already doing perennials, we were already growing hay and selling hay, and so that made it very much easier to switch to organic. That was probably the key. I can see if you were strictly a row crop farmer and didn't have a market for hay, it would be difficult. In fact, that's when people come and ask me, they're considering switching to organic, that's usually the first question I ask them is, do you have a market for grass hay? Do you have a market for hay? Are you currently doing hay? And that's very essential, I think, to having a good organic plan.
When asked for more advice from other farmers interested in producing organic crops, Dan had the following to say.
I would encourage people to be willing to learn themselves and go out and try new things. Don't try it on a large scale. I think once guys start experimenting and it gets in their blood, it's exciting, and most of them, we have quite a few neighbors that have just done that. They've tried a little bit and they got in their blood. They're excited about it and they're making it happen. What? And it can be a different, every farm can look different. You know, there's a different system, a different approach, but if a person's willing to go out and be a pioneer and try something, why, there's lots of opportunities in the organic world.